The studio lights were bright, cameras rolling, and millions of viewers watching live. George Stephanopoulos leaned forward, a sly edge in his voice, as he asked a question loaded with condescension. "Congresswoman Crockett, some critics say your policies are idealistic and unrealistic. How do you respond to that?" The words hung in the air, sharp, designed to provoke, to unnerve. The audience shifted in their seats, a murmur running through the room. The live broadcast captured every twitch, every micro-expression. For a moment, the power of the question seemed to dominate the space. Stephanopoulos' reputation for sharp, cutting interviews made this no ordinary confrontation. It was a gauntlet thrown at Crockett's feet. But Crockett didn't flinch. She turned slowly, her gaze steady, her calm almost unnerving. There was no defensiveness, no flare of irritation, just quiet, measured control. The air thickened as the world seemed to pause. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every detail of her composure, every subtle breath, every slight tightening of her jaw. Then she spoke, deliberately, carefully, every word chosen with precision. "Are you asking because you want an honest answer, or because you enjoy telling people they're dreaming too big?" Her tone was calm, almost conversational, yet there was an undeniable edge that cut through the room like a knife. Gasps rippled across the studio. The live audience leaned forward, eyes wide. Even seasoned producers felt the shift. This wasn't just another media exchange. It was a challenge turned on its head. For a moment, Stephanopoulos' smirk faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his usually controlled expression. He had expected unease, perhaps, but not this quiet, devastating clarity. The tension was electric. Social media feeds already buzzing with real-time updates would explode within seconds. The viewers at home felt it too, the clash of experience versus courage, of confidence versus calm precision. And as Crockett's gaze held steady, as the cameras lingered on her face, it was clear the story had just begun. But what she said next left viewers across America stunned. The morning news cycle was already ablaze. Washington was tense, budget debates looming, legislation stalled, and cultural flashpoints dividing the nation. Every headline, every soundbite carried weight. In the center of it all, Jasmine Crockett had been steadily rising, her voice cutting through the noise with clarity and conviction. Known for her relentless defense of justice and her sharp legal mind, she had become a figure impossible to ignore. George Stephanopoulos was no stranger to high-stakes interviews. Veteran journalist, political strategist, and relentless interrogator, he had built a reputation on asking questions designed to expose weaknesses, push limits, and generate viral moments. Tonight's segment was expected to be no different. Every viewer knew he would press, prod, and test Crockett in ways others hadn't dared. Even before the cameras rolled, the media ecosystem was buzzing. News anchors previewed the interview, analysts debated potential flashpoints, and social media accounts predicted the inevitable clash. Fans of Crockett anticipated her composure, while critics wondered if she might falter under the spotlight. Hashtags already began to trend. Speculation spiraling through Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook, each post hinting at a confrontation that could define the week or the year. Inside the studio, the air was charged with anticipation. Every staffer, every producer felt the gravity. This wasn't just another interview clip. It was a microcosm of the political divide, a stage set for a battle of ideas and temperament. The questions weren't about policy alone. They were about power, influence, and narrative control. Stephanopoulos' probing style was famous for revealing cracks in public figures' armor. The question that had opened the segment was only the first spark. And yet Crockett's calm presence made it clear she had come prepared. She knew the stakes, the optics, the scrutiny that would follow. Her career had been shaped by moments like this, confrontations that demanded courage, precision, and unwavering poise. She understood that every pause, every measured response would be dissected online, replayed in news cycles, and immortalized in memes. As the segment progressed, the tension became almost tangible. Stephanopoulos leaned in, probing, his tone both sharp and clinical. Crockett responded with clarity, careful to never raise her voice, Yet each word landed with weight, framing her as both intellect and moral compass. Committee debates, past hearings, and previous political skirmishes all paled in comparison to this live, unfiltered moment. Social media watchers held their breath, already predicting the next viral clip. Commentators speculated about how Crockett would handle the relentless questioning. Would she falter? Would she counter with the precision her supporters expected? Every viewer understood. This wasn't about politeness. It was about dominance, respect and control of the narrative. And then, in that charged silence between questions, it became clear that the moment was bigger than a simple answer. What Crockett does next doesn't just answer him, it changes the narrative entirely. The country was watching, the cameras were recording, and the story that would dominate headlines was only beginning to unfold. George Stephanopoulos wasn't just another journalist. He was a fixture of American media, a man whose name carried weight in every newsroom and political corridor. From his early days as a communications director in the White House to becoming the face of morning news and prime-time political interviews, Stephanopoulos had built a reputation as both a gatekeeper and a kingmaker. His influence extended beyond television screens. He shaped narratives, framed debates, and knew the levers of power better than most politicians themselves. Viewers had grown accustomed to his style, poised, incisive, and relentless. He could corner a seasoned senator with a single, well-timed question. A politician's carefully rehearsed talking points often crumbled under the weight of his experience. Past interviews had cemented his reputation. Clips circulated endlessly online of him pressing, probing, and exposing inconsistencies. To many, he was a master interrogator, a journalist whose gravitas demanded attention and respect. Yet for all his prowess, Stephanopoulos had vulnerabilities hidden beneath his polished exterior. His confidence sometimes veered into arrogance, a subtle overestimation of his own authority. He was known to underestimate certain voices, especially those unafraid to push back, to challenge his framing, or to remain unwavering under pressure. His dominance of conversations, while often effective, occasionally bordered on a blind spot. He expected compliance, not confrontation, and assumed that his experience alone would control the narrative. His past interviews revealed this pattern. Politicians who faltered in the face of his questions reinforced his belief in his own invincibility. Those who pushed back, however, were rare and memorable. He had faced challengers before, but often in controlled environments, rehearsed press briefings, or with public figures willing to play by unspoken rules. Real resistance, sharp and unflinching, was something he had seldom encountered. Behind the polished interviews, there were whispers, colleagues noting his impatience when responses weren't immediate, his subtle dismissals when someone didn't follow the expected rhythm of conversation. Critics argued that he wielded his platform as a tool of power, shaping who was deemed credible and who was exposed to ridicule. Social media often amplified these moments, but few dared to confront him directly on camera, leaving a pattern of one-sided victories that reinforced his confidence. He had perfected the art of reading a room, of gauging reactions, of asserting control before an interview even began. Every word was calculated, every pause intentional, every question framed to draw out either compliance or a reveal of weakness. To the casual viewer, he appeared unflappable. To his colleagues, he was a genius of media strategy, a man who could shape public opinion with precision. But beneath this mastery lay a subtle fragility. Stephanopoulos' reliance on his reputation, his expectation of deference, and his tendency to underestimate certain challengers made him susceptible to one thing he rarely encountered: an opponent who wouldn't play by the expected rules. Someone calm, prepared, and fearless. And that was the danger he didn't anticipate as he began the interview with Jasmine Crockett. He assumed the familiar rhythm of control would continue. He assumed the questions, carefully crafted and pointed, would dominate the exchange. He assumed the narrative would bend to his will, but he had no idea who he was about to face this time. Jasmine Crockett's story began far from the polished studios of national television. Born in the southern United States, she grew up immersed in communities where resilience was not optional. It was a necessity. From a young age, She witnessed the struggles of families fighting for basic dignity, of neighbors navigating a system often indifferent to their voices. These early experiences shaped her understanding of justice and planted the seeds of a fierce commitment to advocacy that would define her career. Education became her ladder, and she climbed it with determination. Law school was more than an academic pursuit. It was a proving ground. She immersed herself in the intricacies of legislation, constitutional protections, and civil rights law, developing a sharp intellect capable of dissecting arguments, identifying weaknesses, and constructing responses with precision. Her professors and peers recognized a unique combination of intellect and empathy, a rare ability to understand both the letter of the law and the human stories behind it. Crockett's early career as an attorney was marked by a relentless defense of those overlooked by the system. She represented clients who were often dismissed, underestimated, or ignored, using her knowledge and her voice to ensure justice was not just a concept, but a tangible outcome. Each case honed her ability to listen deeply, to anticipate counter-arguments, and to respond strategically under pressure. She learned that power often resided not in volume, but in precision, timing, and clarity. Her transition into public service expanded her stage, but kept the stakes just as high. Crockett entered the political arena aware that scrutiny would be relentless and that her every decision, word, and gesture would be analyzed, debated, and dissected. Early interactions with colleagues, journalists, and opponents tested her composure, and she quickly realized the value of patience and measured response. Each moment of condescension she faced, each attempt to diminish her, became a lesson in resilience. She learned to transform disrespect into opportunity, to answer not with anger, but with calculated clarity that left critics exposed and audiences inspired. Throughout her rise, Crockett maintained a dual focus, unwavering commitment to her principles and a disciplined approach to public engagement. She understood that real influence came not from dominating conversations, but from commanding them through thoughtful articulation. Her past experiences had sharpened her instincts, making her acutely aware of both the opportunities and pitfalls inherent in high-profile interactions. Her reputation grew, and with it, expectations. Constituents, colleagues, and viewers came to anticipate her sharp insights, her ability to cut through noise, and her unshakable poise. She became a figure who represented more than just herself. She embodied resilience, integrity, and the power of a voice that refused to be silenced. And then came moments that tested her like never before. Interviews where the questions were laced with skepticism, debates designed to trip her up, and public exchanges intended to intimidate. In each instance, Crockett's response was consistent, calm, strategic, and undeniably effective. She learned the art of the pause, the power of framing, and the impact of turning a challenge into a defining moment. By the time she faced George Stephanopoulos, Crockett had already faced countless moments that demanded composure, intellect, and moral clarity. Every challenge, every confrontation, every attempt to undermine her had been preparation. Her upbringing, legal career, and political experience converged to form a foundation unshakable by condescension or theatrics. And this moment, this exact interview, was what she had prepared for. It was the culmination of years of resilience, strategy, and relentless pursuit of justice. Every early lesson, every setback, every triumph had led to this point. A live stage, millions watching, a veteran journalist expecting compliance, and a congresswoman ready to respond not with deference, but with truth. The stakes were clear, the tension palpable, and the audience unknowingly on the brink of witnessing a moment that would define both careers. Stephanopoulos leaned forward, voice measured but pointed, each question layered with implication. Congresswoman Crockett, critics argue that your proposals could disrupt the economy. How do you justify them to skeptical voters who fear change? His tone was precise, designed to provoke defensiveness, to push her into a corner. He had done this countless times before, and the rhythm was familiar to him. Rapid fire, precise, and relentless. But Crockett remained composed. Her gaze met his directly, steady and unflinching. She didn't rush to defend or over-explain. Instead, she chose her words with care, delivering each sentence like a measured step in a carefully constructed argument. "Change is necessary when the current system leaves so many behind," she began, her voice calm yet resonant. "Skepticism is natural, but ignoring inequities is not a solution." The live audience shifted in their seats. The cameras lingered, capturing the contrast. Stephanopoulos' sharp, rehearsed approach versus Crockett's unshakable presence. Viewers at home felt it too. The shift was subtle but undeniable. The power dynamic in the room was changing. Questions meant to dominate were instead highlighting her clarity and moral authority. Each challenge Stephanopoulos issued was met with logic, precision, and an undercurrent of quiet strength. He pressed on, layering his inquiries. "But when voters see rising costs or disruptions in services, how do you convince them your policies are practical?" His phrasing was designed to corner, to frame her ideas as idealistic and unattainable. Yet Crockett's response was measured, each word a counterweight to the implication. "Practicality isn't measured by comfort, it's measured by results," she said, her tone unwavering. "If we continue policies that benefit few at the expense of many, comfort is a luxury we can't afford." Tension in the studio mounted. Stephanopoulos' eyebrows rose slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that this was no ordinary exchange. His questions, sharp and deliberate, were failing to land the way he anticipated. Crockett's calm under pressure was turning his own rhythm against him. Viewers could feel the transformation. The questions, intended to dominate, now only highlighted her expertise and composure. The audience leaned in as the exchange continued. Stephanopoulos attempted a pivot, bringing up past statements and controversial headlines, trying to corner her with implication. Crockett responded with clarity, referencing facts, context, and her own consistent record of advocacy. Her words carried weight not because they were loud or aggressive, but because they were precise, grounded, and impossible to dismiss. Every pause she allowed amplified the tension. Silence became a tool, a strategic device that forced both the live audience and viewers at home to lean closer. The usual balance of power in interviews, experience, and media gravitas was slipping from Stephanopoulos' control. He tried a follow-up, a subtle jab designed to unsettle her, but the effect was diminishing. Each question met her calm authority, each challenge underscoring her credibility, and then, as if timed perfectly, she delivered a line that crystallized the moment. A sentence so precise, so perfectly pitched, that it left the room suspended in disbelief. The kind of sentence that could halt a seasoned journalist mid-thought. Then she said the one line that stopped him in his tracks. Crockett's eyes never wavered. Stephanopoulos, poised and expecting a faltering response, blinked at the calm precision before him. In that instant, the air shifted, the studio's energy charged with tension, anticipation, and disbelief. She began deliberately, each word chosen to dismantle his framing without raising her voice. "Without theatrics, let's address the assumptions in your question," she started. Her tone measured, each syllable punctuated by quiet authority. "Change isn't about disruption for its own sake. It's about accountability, equity, and tangible results. The data doesn't lie, and history shows that inaction often costs more than deliberate reform." Her delivery was surgical. Stephanopoulos leaned slightly forward, eyebrows knitted, as if searching for a flaw, a crack, a hesitation, but found none. Every statistic she cited, every example she referenced, was precise, verifiable, and directly tied to the larger narrative she was constructing. She wasn't merely responding. She was reframing the conversation entirely. Strategic pauses amplified her impact. A fraction of silence followed each sentence, allowing both the studio audience and millions watching at home to absorb the weight of her words. These weren't empty pauses. They were deliberate, making the air itself thick with anticipation, forcing Stephanopoulos to adjust mid-interview. He had anticipated resistance, but not this level of clarity, moral authority, and composure. She continued, shifting seamlessly from fact to principle. "Mr. Stephanopoulos, when you ask about practicality, consider the lived experiences of the people affected by these policies. Practicality without justice is not wisdom, it's negligence. Leadership isn't measured by avoiding discomfort. It's measured by standing for what's right, even when it's inconvenient. The cameras caught every subtle reaction. Stephanopoulos' expression flickered. A twitch of surprise, a momentary narrowing of eyes, a subtle pause where his own words seemed insufficient. The studio audience gasped quietly, sensing a pivot in authority. The balance had shifted. Questions that had been intended to corner were now highlighting Crockett's mastery of both content and presence. Social media erupted almost immediately. Clips of her poised dismantling of his line of questioning began circulating in real time. Hashtags were born mid-broadcast, or Crockett Clapback, Aka Speechless, Facts Over Fear. Viewers tweeted, clipped, and commented at a pace that even the studio monitors struggled to keep up with. The ripple effect was instantaneous. She didn't rely on anger or theatrics. Her weapon was precision and clarity. Every sentence built upon the last, creating a crescendo that made the interview a defining moment of political discourse. She addressed mischaracterizations, corrected assumptions, and exposed the fragility of overconfidence cloaked as authority. And let's be honest, she continued, calm but firm. If your goal is to question, do so with accuracy. Disrespect isn't neutral. It's a reflection of priorities. And if we're going to talk about leadership, let's acknowledge that integrity matters as much as optics. Each phrase landed like a carefully aimed strike, invisible yet unmistakable. Stephanopoulos' attempts to pivot or interrupt were stymied, not through volume but through the undeniable logic and authority of Crockett's delivery. Every factual reference, every moral point, every composed rebuttal reinforced her position, leaving the veteran journalist momentarily unmoored. Even the production team noticed. The usual rhythm of the broadcast, the anticipated back and forth, the controlled tension had transformed. Viewers leaned in, captivated by a demonstration of intellect and integrity that was as instructive as it was electrifying. The studio, live on air, became an arena where discipline, preparation, and composure outshone even media gravitas. By the time she concluded, the silence was deafening. Stephanopoulos, trained to respond instantly, struggled for a moment to gather his composure. Cameras lingered, capturing every blink, every micro-expression of someone realizing that control had slipped. The audience, both live and digital, felt the magnitude of the moment. This wasn't just an interview. It was a recalibration of perceived power. And for those watching, Crockett said, her tone unwavering, remember, clarity isn't loud, and strength isn't always visible. Integrity and preparation speak louder than interruption or pretense. That was the line that would be replayed endlessly online. Clips captured the exact pause, the exact expressions, the exact weight of words that had left a seasoned journalist unsettled. It wasn't just the content, it was the mastery of timing, the seamless blend of fact, principle, and quiet authority that made the moment unforgettable. As the broadcast continued, analysts began dissecting her approach in real time, highlighting how she had not just defended herself, but reshaped the narrative entirely. Her words became teaching points, inspiring young politicians, activists, and citizens to recognize that composure and preparation can overpower even the most commanding figures. And in that moment, everything flipped. Stephanopoulos, known for his controlled interviews and seasoned presence, had been met with a force he hadn't accounted for, a voice that refused to be diminished, a mind prepared for every angle, and a courage that translated into clarity on the national stage, and the ripple effect went far beyond the studio. As soon as Crockett's words landed, the digital world ignited. Twitter feeds filled with stunned reactions, each clip of her calm, precise dismantling of Stephanopoulos circulating faster than most could scroll. Hashtags exploded into trending lists. Cas Crockett Clapback, ta Stephanopoulos shocked, Facts Over Fear. Memes emerged within minutes, images of her composed stare juxtaposed with his stunned expressions, GIFs looping the pause that left the veteran journalist momentarily speechless. YouTube and TikTok were flooded with highlights, edits, and reaction videos. Influencers analyzed every nuance, her timing, her strategic pauses, the clarity of her points. Social media users shared their own interpretations, praising her ability to confront authority without anger, to answer aggression with logic and moral precision. The clips quickly became teaching tools, inspiring debates across comment sections, forums, and live streams. Traditional media couldn't ignore it. News networks replayed the moment repeatedly, dissecting her arguments and analyzing Stephanopoulos' reactions. Political commentators debated the significance of her delivery, emphasizing how a single interview could shift public perception, reshape narratives, and challenge assumptions about media dominance. Analysts highlighted that Crockett's composure and strategic framing had not only addressed his questions but exposed vulnerabilities in the way journalists approach political figures. Celebrities and public figures weighed in. Tweets and Instagram posts expressed admiration for her sharp intellect and calm poise, calling her unflinching, unstoppable, and an exemplar of integrity under pressure. Even politicians, some of whom had previously been silent on her work, publicly acknowledged her mastery of the exchange. What was intended as a high-profile media moment became a broader cultural touchpoint, sparking discussions about respect, representation, and the treatment of women and marginalized voices in public discourse. Memes weren't just humorous, they amplified a message. Each viral iteration distilled the essence of the moment. Crockett's control, Stephanopoulos' shock, and the undeniable shift in perceived authority. Digital audiences used these visuals to express support, critique media practices, and spark debates that reached far beyond the original interview. The incident became a case study in how a single exchange could ripple across platforms, influencing conversations, opinions, and even media strategies. On Capitol Hill and in political circles, the impact was immediate. Staffers, lobbyists, and elected officials discussed the interview in private and public settings alike. Analysts noted how her clarity and moral authority contrasted sharply with media attempts to dominate discourse, creating a paradigm where preparation, composure, and authenticity could outmatch experience and reputation. It wasn't just a viral moment. It was a recalibration of power dynamics between public figures and the media. Discussion threads across platforms highlighted the broader societal implications. Commenters praised her ability to confront skepticism with facts and moral clarity. They noted that her response wasn't just a defense of herself. It was a defense of principles, values, and the integrity of public discourse. The audience felt validated, inspired, and motivated to amplify voices that refused to be diminished. And the momentum continued. Each new clip, analysis, and social media discussion extended the reach of the moment, creating a chain reaction that kept it relevant for days. Political podcasts, commentary shows, and opinion columns referenced it repeatedly, framing it as a turning point in media-politician dynamics. Discussions about bias, respect, and preparation for high-stakes interviews dominated headlines and online debates alike. But this wasn't just a viral moment. It shifted conversations in Washington and beyond. After the cameras stopped rolling and the social media storm began, Crockett addressed the moment with measured reflection. "This wasn't about me versus him," she said, her voice steady, resonant, carrying the weight of principle. "It's about truth, respect, and accountability. It's about making sure that in every conversation, integrity is never optional." Her words resonated far beyond the studio, a reminder that the power of one voice could shift the narrative, challenge assumptions, and uphold dignity against even the most formidable figures. She framed the encounter not as a personal victory, but as a moral lesson for the broader public. When truth is confronted by authority or intimidation, it doesn't retreat, she continued. It stands firm. It demands acknowledgement. And it reminds us that respect isn't granted automatically. It's earned through integrity and courage. In those lines, the universal themes of justice and representation were clear. Dignity, whether for women, Black voices, or marginalized. Communities could not be compromised for optics or convenience. Crockett's reflection carried a broader resonance about American values. She spoke to the principle that leadership is measured not by dominance, but by accountability. Leadership is not about silencing opposition. It's about listening, understanding and responding with clarity and conviction, she emphasized. The encounter with Stephanopoulos became a microcosm of a larger truth, that fairness, knowledge, and composure often outmatch aggression, assumptions, and superficial authority. Her words inspired audiences by highlighting resilience and moral clarity. Strength isn't about volume or theatrics or fear, Crockett explained. It's about preparation, integrity, and the courage to speak when others expect silence. This universal reflection invited viewers to see the encounter not as a singular clash, but as a model for approaching challenges in daily life, standing firm for what is right, even when the odds seem weighted against you. The lesson extended beyond politics into broader social consciousness. Crockett underscored that public discourse, whether in media, politics, or community engagement, thrives when voices are heard and treated with respect. Her approach illustrated that confrontations could be opportunities for education, empowerment, and cultural reckoning, emphasizing that constructive engagement can coexist with unwavering moral principle. Crockett's reflection also connected with themes of accountability. She reminded viewers that power is not absolute and that those who wield it must be confronted when they falter. Accountability doesn't come from anger. It comes from clarity, evidence, and the courage to uphold what is just, she stated. By doing so, she framed the moment as a blueprint for citizens and public figures alike, showing that integrity can challenge entrenched authority effectively. Her closing thoughts carried inspiration and hope. She encouraged audiences to recognize that resilience and composure are forms of power that ripple beyond a single encounter. When we respond thoughtfully and truthfully, Crockett said, we set examples, inspire others, and transform even the most intimidating moments into opportunities for change. Her moral framing was uplifting, affirming that dignity, justice, and representation are values worth defending. So how do we respond when truth meets power? This was the clash that left a seasoned journalist speechless, a moment where poise, preparation, and unwavering integrity outshone experience and reputation. Jasmine Crockett didn't just answer questions. She reframed the narrative, showing viewers across America that respect, truth, and accountability matter more than theatrics or intimidation. As the dust settles, the lesson is clear. Speak your truth, even when the room feels against you. Stay informed, hold power to account, and never underestimate the impact of a calm, confident voice in the face of authority. Every question answered. Thoughtfully, every point made with precision reinforces that integrity is a force that cannot be silenced. Your role doesn't end with watching. Amplify the voices that challenge disrespect. Share moments that inspire courage. Subscribe to stay connected to stories that highlight resilience, justice, and moral clarity. Be part of a movement that values truth over fear and action over passivity. Remember, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the sound of truth winning. Every time you choose to stand firm, every time you challenge misinformation or intimidation, you contribute to a culture where respect and accountability are non-negotiable. So take this moment, reflect on its power, and carry it forward. Speak, act, and share. Because in the end, courage and integrity ripple far beyond a single interview. They shape the narrative, influence the culture, and remind everyone watching that standing for justice is never optional.